So start the recording and mute you all in the usual way. And welcome you all to the 2595th meeting of the Caledonian Philatelic Society. And we begin with the special congratulations to Alan Blakely, who's been around the sun, I calculate 25,567 times so far, and has reached his 8th decade. So congratulations, Alan. I hope you had a good one. And
well
enjoy the particular display which George has prepared especially for you this evening. Our speaker this evening, as you know, is Brian Dow. I'm not going to say any more than, Brian, you're very welcome. I've already allowed you to share screen. And if you unmute yourself and introduce your display, I shall sit back and enjoy it.
Say some screen sharing. Oh, there we go. That's the end of it.
I think if you find the button that says slideshow and then go to beginning, yeah.
See it now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Hurtigruten, obviously. The display is mainly concerned with the express coastal service of the west coast of Norway, namely Hurtigruten. So this is my first slide, Adventurous Journey with Hurtigruten. A lot of slides, so I'm going to rattle through them. I'll put them on maybe for 10-15 seconds at the very most, I think, or maybe the very least. Now, I apologise now for any mispronunciations that I'll make, and I've resisted the temptation of providing a philatelic tour of the ports or stops within the service. Although I have included one or two exceptions, some of which are related to the expedition side of Hurtigruten. I think Alistair kind of asked for them anyway. I'd also like to thank various contributors to the Hurtigruten social media for photographs that I've pinched for this little presentation. I know that quite a lot of people in the society, for example, Ken Norris, who's not with us at the moment, will have experienced a lot of Hurtigruten voyages, and despite that, I'm going to have a wee preamble. Obviously, Hurtigruten is mainly travelling from Bergen down the south there, all the way up to Kirkenes, which is way over in the top right hand of the screen, and then coming all the way back, and that takes 11 days altogether to actually happen, which means that normally speaking, there's 11 vessels that will actually go up and, well, beyond the actual voyage as such, one leaving each day. I actually went on the Hurtigruten only 8 years ago now, 2013, and it was in March when we went in the Trollfjorden, which is the ship in the top right there. It was one of the biggest ships in the Hurtigruten fleet at that time. Still is, I think, along with the Midnight Sol, which is roughly similar to it. The two ships, the Trollfjord and Midnight Sol, are actually going to be renamed other names, which I'll describe later on. But the Trollfjord itself said quite a big ship, 654 berths, which is actually small when you compare it against etc. And a maximum 822 passengers and a service speed of 18 knots. And the cargo hold, you can see that there's two openings in the side there. The foremost one is for the passengers, and the back one is actually for the cargo itself. The cargo space is about 45 cars. And of course, the Hurtigruten is really a working ferry as such. If we were on our trip, it should actually have called it, I think, 66 stops. And unfortunately, we had to miss quite a few out because of the bad weather we had at the time. So we omitted quite a lot. And we did see the Northern Lights up the top left. That was a very poor photograph, but it was the best we could do at the time. the cameras we had. I've since learned how to do them a wee bit more better than that. And we saw the Northern Lights practically every night after we got north of Trondheim, more or less within the Arctic Circle itself. We also learned to dog sleigh, and we also rode for an hour on a reindeer sleigh, which was really a very pleasant experience, and various other things obviously as well. So back onto display. This map shows the positions of the 11 Hurtigruten vessels when I snapshotted it way back in March 2017. You can see that MS Polaris was actually down in Bergen itself, and the rest of them are all scattered up and down the shore, 5 going northbound, 5 going southbound. I did a similar positioning last week just to see what was actually happening. And you can see that there are 5 vessels now plying between Bergen and Kirkenes, and they're going every alternate day now, leaving Bergen. The other ships you can actually see are facing out towards the west, or one down the very bottom, which is not even in the Bergen-Kirkenes route, are all docked, not being used. And I did look about six or 7 months ago in the initial lockdown period, and there was only 2 ships doing it at that time. They were plying from Bojo, which is just south of the Lofoten Islands, going round to Kirkenes, one going northbound, one going southbound. And it was taking them, I think, 3 days to actually go up, and then 3 days to come back down. Right, going back onto a wee bit of history. Hurtigruten was formed in 1893 when Captain Richard With, he's the guy in the middle really of the group of individuals in the left-hand picture with the cap on, and we've all got moustaches, but he's the one that's got the bands in his arms, obviously, to show he's the captain. He was the captain of the ship Vesteralen, and that provided the first service for Hurtigruten as such, which was a more regular service as such. But the express coasters actually had been around for a long time before 1893. The Prince Gustav was one of the first that started service in 1838 from Trondheim and travelled north. And this ship had a top speed of 8 knots, and the passengers were forbidden to actually speak to the helmsman. Whilst first and second class passengers had common cabins, third class were confined to the forward part of the exposed upper deck. But in bad weather, they were often allowed to seek shelter in the engine room, which was quite a nice thing for them to actually be able to do. I've got another cover celebrating the Prince Gustav, and again, the information within it told me that it took 8 days to travel from Trondheim just up to Hammerfest. And during the hours of darkness and poor visibility, the ship actually lay anchor as there was no charts that existed at that time. So that's why it took so long. As far as postal history goes, 1868, I've got a cover here, a bit damaged at the left-hand side, but it was posted in Trondheim. It was carried on the Hammerfest to Hamburg packet. E was the postmark used on the steamer Hakon Jarl, which was one of the early coastal steamers. Next postcard is from was actually sent to Dunblane, but it had a similar cancellation on it, except Hammerfest Hamburg, except the code was G, and this actually referred to a steamship SS Jupiter, which was obviously in the year Hurtigruten started. It went to somebody in the Dunblane, obviously. And this dog-eared postcard actually showed the timetable for the next week in September 1894, when you can actually see the northbound ships included various ships, the Torkensjol, Finnmarken, Sigurd Jarl, Venus Palace, and also southbound ships which went to Christiania, which was the old name for Oslo. The Melumsteder is actually all the intermediary ports, because you can see that going northbound as well. Some ships going out to Hamburg as well. Newcastle via Stavanger, and Newcastle direct ones as well. So there's quite a lot of ships, obviously, in this timetable. one of them, the Sigurd Jarl, which you can see there going to Vadsø. I managed to get a postcard which actually has the Sigurd Jarl name on it, obviously based in Trondheim, this ship. It was leaving on Thursday to Vadsø on the previous postcard, and it carried up to 292 passengers. It was kept in service until it was in the Second World War. So they lasted a long time, these ships. Kong Harald, it travelled from the Hamburg, Kristiansand, and then on to Vadsø route in winter. So it had a long voyage. Whilst in the summer, it was a tourist ship and went on to the North Cape. And you can see the cachet for North Cape up in the top left of the postcard. Again, this ship remained in service for 60 years before being replaced. And I managed to get a photograph of it on the right-hand side. A further maritime TPO postmark was this 4-ringed numbered postmark, and the number within this one, 563, and that referred to the steamer Hurtigruten, which plied from around Aalesund. Again, these TPOs would then feed into the Hurtigruten route as such. 2 ships, postal valuables lists, one for the North Stern and one from the Sigurd Jarl, listing the valuables from Trondheim carried in these ships. Again, it's quite a nice wee item in 1908 and 1909. Northland's Postal Express postmarks were used in the ships travelling from Trondheim to Kirkenes, and I've got 2 examples here from 1910, 1912, code Z and code Z. And of course, there's plenty of other codes as well, but I'm giving them as one of the examples. And this is a postcard of the first Midnight Sol, Hurtigruten vessel, which was in service for 40 years before being scrapped in 1950. There's various feeder services fed into the main Hurtigruten Trondheim-Kirkenes route, and the Salten operated between Bodo and the Lofoten Islands. Again, there's various postcodes for these as well, but the code D in that particular example, there are several others. The main route for the Hurtigruten was this Northland Postal Expedition, an example here from 1922. Again, there's various other codes. You see this is a code N with a star. There's various other codes for this as well. Quite like this item, it was from one of the shipping companies that were in the Hurtigruten. It was going to the USA, but that didn't matter. It was a nice registered letter from Bergen. But in the back of it, which I've got on the right-hand side, the scan of it, you can actually see that the route of all the various ships, their particular shipping line went from Bergen right up the coast to Kirkenes. It also went to Iceland and Faroes, went direct to New York, Argentina and Brazil, to Glasgow, and then on to Manchester, Newcastle, London, Rotterdam, Cologne, you name it, it went there. So they had a good shipping line. Obviously, Bergen was the centre of the universe at that point for that particular shipping company. 1932, with the Trondheim-Bergen route, and it got its own range of postmarks. Again, I've got one of the codes, code E here, which is actually shown. And it was run by Hurtigruten from 1932. A table here, which is a complicated table, but it was really to go through the various postmarks of the Trondheim-Kirkenes, which is the main route for Hurtigruten. There are 4 main types of postmark. Going through them from the left-hand side to the right, we've got a 2-ring, a 2-ring with a bridge, a 2-ring with a bridge and obliterator, and then a single ring. And then you've got codes going from A to Z. And the red or pink shading means that the examples don't exist at all, but the other ones do exist, obviously. Example of the type 4, which is the one with the bridge plus obliterators, code L from 1967, going to Greenock. Quite a nice strike for that particular one. And a poorer example here, except for code E, this particular one, you can see that it was written on the SS Princess Ragnhild in 1935, and only 4 years later, within the Second World War, this ship was actually sunk after an explosion when it was carrying 330 German soldiers, 75 passengers and 50 crew. 79 of the 142 survivors were actually Norwegian. A similar postmark, except code R, was actually lost on Richard With when it was torpedoed in 1941, with the loss of 99 lives. 29 Norwegians and 3 Germans actually survived. An example of the Touring Type 3 postmark is from the Midnight Sol in 1982. Quite a nice strike. And the way Norway, obviously, in Norway, they seem to actually cancel the stamps, and then they also put a cancel to the side to make sure that people can read when it actually went through the postal system, unlike Britain, which just put 10 lines through things these days. A 1982 envelope posted in the Håkon Jarl on its last trip in December 1982, before it came off the Hurtigruten route. And there are both types 2 and type 6 postmarks on it, and they're both code N. And we've also got a register label on it with the same code letter, code N, which is quite a nice item. A 1983 valuables letter, that's the V, insured letter with a V label, etiquette, code L, together with a single ring code L from the MS Polaris on the shipping letter, air letter as well, which is quite a nice item for Hurtigruten people. The last trip of the Nordlys had a code A, single circle, and a blank register label, which was cancelled with an extra postmark. In 1977, had a postcard again from the Nordlys with a registered etiquette with a code O and a single ring postmark with a code O. And again, if you remember, the previous one was from the Nordlys and the code A. This one's from the Nordlys, it's got a code O. And this demonstrates that the codes don't relate to the ships at all, but actually the postmen that board the ship, either in Trondheim or Kirkenes, they actually perform the travelling postal duties required of them. 1981 letter from the Nord-Norge had an asterisk code letter, and this was the register label actually had a reserve Roman 2 on it. Again, a very nice item because it meant it's not used that often. And the reverse of this ordinary looking letter from the front actually had a strip of 4 charity labels on it for the Seamen's Mission, and each label actually had this Hurtigruten ship Ragnhild Jarl on it. So again, it's another item for Hurtigruten. 90 years of the Hurtigruten, and you've got a special cover and a special square postmark in 1983. Quite a nice cover as well that they produced for this. There's other feeder service that went into Trondheim Kirkenes service. For example, the Lofoten and Vesteralen postal service. I've got examples, some code letters A, C, D, and E. I don't have a B. And they're from way back 1895 right up to 1915. On the same sort of route to Lofoten and Vesteralen, they changed their postmarks from 1921 to 63, and they went to this bridge and obliterator type 1 with codes A right through to E. I managed to get various examples there. And at the southern end of the classic voyage, you've also got a TPO special postmark from Bergen to Malloy. And if you leave Bergen on the ship, and let's say you leave about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you get to Malloy the next morning. So that's as far as you go with that particular one. Again, there's various code letters for that as well. And this was carried in the Nordlys on this particular occasion. And I went to Harold McNeil again, who actually did a lot to Hurtigruten trips by the looks of it. This is a souvenir sheet which is dated the 31st of December 1983, and that was the last day of the Trondheim Kirkenes travelling post office. And the sheet itself actually shows a number of postmarks used by the Hurtigruten or the maritime TPOs. And the demise of that was really because aircraft were able to actually speed up the mail considerably. And there's obviously airports all the way up to Kirkenes that could take their mail back to Oslo very, very quickly. And that's the way that mail went in Norway, that their first class was always airmail to whichever part of Norway it had to go to. The Svalbard route was also officially taken over by Hurtigruten in 1968, but some of the ships actually were flying along the route before that. Before that, they actually used this on the left-hand side before 1968. It's a crown castle, undated, with where they dumped the mail. It's either been at or the other end at nearby. And on the right-hand side, you see the postmark that was introduced when Hurtigruten took over. It's a sort of pictorial ship castle, the Svalbard on the bottom of it. That's a dated hand stamp, which was allowed to cancel the mail. I've been lucky to be at Svalbard on a couple of occasions. And the last occasion I left, I found this huge post box, claimed to be the biggest post box in the world. On the way in, there's no way anybody could climb up to actually put any mail within the post sign of the actual post box, because it's absolutely huge. I've got a photograph of myself outside Longyearbyen post office, which they don't have any signs outside it whatsoever to say that the post office was within it. But there is a stamp with the Longyearbyen post office up there that was produced, I think, in 1990, and also the cancellation you get when you go in there up the top right. The northernmost post office in New Alison, I've been there twice. In 2012, the post office was actually open, even though it was a Sunday when I visited, but in 2017 it was actually closed. Personalised stamps you can get from there. You can see 3 examples there. 2 look as if they're actually identical, but they are slightly different. You can actually get these stamps if the post office is open. If it's not open, you get it at the shop next door. If you post any material there, postcards are cancelled with the machine cancel down the bottom left. But if you send letters or envelopes, you'll get the cancellation you see in the right-hand side. 2017, I was able to visit Barentsburg, which is at the south end of Svalbard. And this is a Russian mining town where around 300 Russians and Ukrainians live in apparent harmony. And when I entered the post office there, you take your boots off when you go in there. But when you go in, this was the room I saw when you went in. There was a meal all sorted out, I think mainly for delivery or uplift by the people. And when you go through to the post office itself, you see a post box, an official Norway post and post box. And at the post office itself, you got a range of caches. I think there was 1, 2, 3, I think there was 8 or 9 caches there at the desk, which you could apply to whatever mail you were actually going to send. But they were selling these unofficial labels at the post office itself. You can see the Svalbard map and a Russian insignia on all the label itself. Nothing to do with Norway Post, and you wouldn't be able to put that through the Norway Post system because they'd reject it. But I managed to get one of these 3 or 4 years prior to that, and it was to celebrate the 75th anniversary of Arctic coal produced by the Russians in Svalbard. The grade of coal there is actually very, very poor, and you never guess who actually it's exported to, but Britain, for some reason. 1977, coming back to Hurtigruten itself, we had a stamp issue showing various ships, and 2 of these stamps actually showed Hurtigruten vessels. The one in the top right was the Vesteralen, which is the ship that actually founded the service. Another two, well, the other one depicted a more modern one showing the North Stern and the Harald Jarl. In 1992, the purser on the Midnight Sol, who at this time the TPOs had actually stopped, and he'd been given permission to cancel mail on board, and he managed to dig up a special pictorial hand stamp of his ship when it visited Trollfjorden. And he used that particular day, and it was quite successful. And other ships soon followed, and they got their own collection of postmarks. And I've managed to collect quite a few over the years. And you'll see I've got the range from 1992 through to 1996 with the various ships. But there's one ship that's actually duplicated. You can see the right-hand side, the Polaris for 1992 at the top, which is the older ship, and down the bottom you see the same ship again, 1996, but it's a completely different ship that's there because it had been replaced at that point in 1996, and that's why you get two examples of that same sort of postmark for the same ship. 1993, you had the Hurtigruten centenary, and that was marked by two stamps produced by Norway Post. The left-hand one showing Richard With and the old Vesteralen, and the right-hand one just showing a modern bridge and a modern ship. The left-hand side of the cover, you can actually see the post box on the gangway, which is what they did up until 1983 when the TPOs actually stopped. They no longer have this post box on the gangway. I never saw it anyway in the time I've been on it. And you had special cancels, obviously the Trondheim Hammerfest cancel, and also one for the Hurtigruten Museum. And this is the Hurtigruten Museum card you saw way back at the start. So I'll not spend too much time on that. It's just that they produced their own maxi card with a special cancel. In the Hurtigruten Museum, when I went to it in 2013, we went it on the southbound journey, not on the northbound journey, just only in the southbound journey. And this museum is based in Stokmarknes in the Lofoten Islands. And this postal sorter is actually a wax figure, and he hasn't moved for quite a long time, trying to sort his mail. And next door to him, you had parcels and mail bags still lying in the museum undelivered. It's absolutely dreadful. Finnmarken is actually outside, and you can see it was actually in the open when I visited it, but in 2021 you can see it's now been totally enclosed in a revamp of the whole building, which is closed at the moment, but it'll be open at some point in the summer. 1994 Winter Olympics, the torch relay spent 2 days on one of the Hurtigruten ships, the MS Kong Harald, between Tromsø and Kirkenes. You can see the whole route of it in the postcard on the right. Went all over Norway, and then it flew, I think, from it looks like Trondheim up to Tromsø, and then Tromsø out to Longyearbyen, out in Svalbard, and then it took the ship from Tromsø up to Kirkenes on the 2nd of January, and it took to the 4th of January to actually get to Kirkenes. The examples are postmarked for the 2nd and the 4th, but I don't have any for the 3rd. I don't know if they even exist. 1995, with a Norway Post booklet of stamps for a tourist stamp of Hurtigruten, which you pass coming southbound. You pass it going northbound as well, but I think it's probably in the dark when you're going northbound. And on the booklet there is the Richard With as the ship on the cover. And you can see the Hurtigruten, the hole within the big rock better when you actually see this photograph on the left-hand side. That's people climbing up to go through that hole, but it's seemingly big enough you can actually put a sailing ship through it. So it's quite a big hole. There's booklets of stamps also. That particular booklet of stamps was produced by the Harstead Post Office, and quite often they have other ones as well showing Hurtigruten ships. So that's as an example of them all there. I've got the one on the left, the Harstad postconter, with I think it's a polar list that's on it. But the other ones I don't have at all. But I've noticed them on eBay, and I'm not prepared to pay the price to get them. I've got a couple of comical postcards, a sort of halfway point here. You can see for yourself, the guy on the left, obviously trying to dodge the and the chap on the right, the captain's actually caught a fish, but they think the chef's going to actually grab it and cook it. Because most of the cuisine on the Hurtigruten is fish based, as you may realise. Some of it is actually quite nice. 1996, you saw the amalgamation of the various ship lines that actually formed the Hurtigruten, ODBS and the TFDS, OVDS, sorry, and the TFDS. And they had a special hand stamp actually, to commemorate it, and it was timed on the arrival of two new ships that joined the fleet, and that was the Nordkapp and the replacement Polar List, which I mentioned earlier. 1997, Norway celebrated 350 years of carrying mail, and they celebrated this by various special carriages of mail called the Postskissen 97, and that means Transport 97. And they had them for various forms, and this was for the sea ship route, but the Bergen Trondheim, the TPO route, had a special postmark. It was used for several weeks. 24th of May was when it started, and an example went on as far as the 11th of June. So it's been certainly at least 3 weeks they were actually using a dated hand stamp. 1999, Norway Post produced a set of 4 postcards, all depicting the Hurtigruten, and they all, when you turned them over, had a special imprinted Hurtigruten stamp on it, and a special cancel was available for the date of issue. Again, this one shows the Bergen, Kirkenes, Bergen, a ship with the mountains behind it, Hurtigruten at the top of it, and the date, the 11th of June, 1999. 2001 saw the last trip of the Harald Jarl, and I had a special cover for that. 2002 did the maiden voyage of the Finn Marken, and that had a special cancel going from Bergen with a packable cancellation for some reason. Shouldn't have had a packable on it when it was a Norwegian stamp with posted in Bergen. But its maiden voyage went from the 6th to the 20th of April, and you see it went from Bergen to Orkneys to Hebrides, and then round to Dublin, then on to Southampton, and then Southampton back via Germany and Netherlands, Copenhagen, back to Oslo, and then on to Bergen. 2003, did Hurtigruten's first trip to Antarctica with MS Nord-Norge, a special cancel for that, for the ship leaving Hammerfest on the 20th of September, and it arrived in Ushuaia down in Argentina on the 3rd of November with a special cancel there. Again, I'll go into a wee bit of time here, especially for Ulster. Antarctic trips invariably visit Port Lockroy, and that's the southernmost post office open to the public. We had the northernmost post office at New Alison earlier on, and this post office, Port Lockroy, is sometimes called the Penguin Post Office because a lot of penguins obviously right outside it. In 2014, I visited Port Lockroy, and one of the days we were filming the Penguin Post Office, the TV documentary, and I sent 3 letters, similar to the one on the right-hand side there, with MS Flam cachets I put on them, and 1 stamp on each envelope. Unknown to me, the stamp I put on was an airmail postcard. You can see at the top of the stamp, I put on envelopes. There's nothing in the envelopes, they're empty envelopes. And I got Port Lockroy postmistress, at that time it was Christy Liesel, who was an American. She signed my letter for me. I then photographed her collecting the mail from the box, which is in the next slide. My envelope arrived 6 weeks later, as did the other 2, which were sent to Ken Norris and Julia MacLeod. Theirs had 2 stamps on them when they arrived. I only put 1 stamp on, but another stamp had obviously been put on by, obviously, Christy Liesel, because obviously I'd used postcard stamps, and envelope stamps for real letters had a different rate, obviously a bit higher than postcards. Now, this is a map of where Hurtigruten plan to explore in the next year or so. And you can see that they're more or less all over the world now. Whole of Western America, the Northwest Passage and Franz Josef Land are some of the ones I point out anyway, as well as the usual ones that they go to, which is Greenland, Svalbard and Antarctica. But on the right hand side, which I can't really see at the moment, but you can actually see a green line, a pink line, a blue, orange and black. And these refer to the various ships they're using for the expeditions. Two of the ships are actually the Roald Amundsen and Fridtjof Nansen are actually hybrid ships. The batteries in them as well as diesel power. And the other two ships are MS Fram, MS Spitsbergen, and there's the old ship MS Norstern as well. And they're all on the expedition side of Hurtigruten. We've also got three ships that have been announced that Trofjord, the Finnmarken and Midnattsø are going to be renamed MS Maud, Lotto Sverdrup and the Ettrick Raud. And these three ships are probably all going to be converted to being hybrid ships as well. In other words, we're going to have batteries installed in them that will actually help back them up in port or wherever they go and make them truly economic as such, as far as the green economy goes. So Hurtigruten seem to have actually separated off into the ones that do the western voyage going up the Norwegian coast and the expedition ones. And that seems to be the way things are going in the future. Going on to 2006, back to Hurtigruten itself, the Norstern reached 50 years and it was commemorated both by Norway Post, you can see in the right hand side, and also on the left hand side by the German Postal Service by special cancels. 2007, the actual Fram was delivered and there's a special postmark there for Oslo when it was actually delivered from the shipyard in Italy, I think, where it was built. 2010, there's a German special cancel featuring the Fram. And on the right hand side, you can see Fram's pictorial cancel built when it was in Svalbard. 2008, the pictorial, 2000 and, so this is 2008. With 100 years of the Hurtigruten travelling to Kirkenes near the Russian border, and again there's a special cover for that, showing that. 2006, I saw some of these pictorial date stamps. Now, some of these, I don't have a full collection of them, but some of them seem to have been used as cachets, and others seem to be used to actually cancel stamps. So they're a bit elusive. The more recent ones actually seem to have the ship and the name of the ship on it, and nothing else to do with it. It could be used at any time of in the voyage. But you then have cancellers, and I first seen them in 2007, and you mostly see them in black ink, but you can see again the polar list up the top right and blue ink in one particular occasion. Very big cancels, and they're used anywhere within the voyage as such. This particular cancel here is the Richard With, and you can see that it's been misspelt. The Richard has got a middle, it's correctly spelt, but it's from 2012. So obviously the earlier cancellation in 2007 was in the go for maybe, I don't know how many years before they found out it was wrongly spelt. But obviously this postcard was missent to the Philippines as well. Nothing to do with Hurtigruten, but it's just a nice wee extra thing as well. Geiranger, a range of Geiranger pictorial cancels showing each ship visiting and consecutive dates. A personalised stamp going from 20th of July right through to 30th of July. 11 ships obviously, going one in each day. 2010, Trofjord, consecutive dates again from 25th of April right through, again for the 11 ships, one going through each day. And then cool, we've got a pictorial hand stamp for that as well. I reckon it started in 2009, but I don't have a complete set, so I don't know if they all got it at that particular time or not. 2011, the Troll Fjord on the top introduced Cape pictorial cancel, and then it was altered to include a great big long large arc, and then it was issued to the fleet, and you can see again the full range going the 1st of June to the 11th of June for the 11 ships that are actually doing it, and then a further one later on by one of the other ships. And when you're on Hurtigruten vessels, you can actually purchase their own personalised stamps on board each ship. You can see that 4 of these 5 personalised stamps have the Hurtigruten logo at the bottom right of the stamp. The one in the middle didn't. So you actually see these on their own stamps. If you go from the ship itself and go clockwise, the next one's obviously the Arctic Circle. The one below it is North Cape. The one in the middle is Kirkenes Fjord, and the one in the bottom left is Troll Fjord. So the 4 of these personalised stamps will be the same in every ship you go, but the one in the top left obviously is different. When I was in the Troll Fjord, I think when we were going through the Arctic Circle or past North Cape, this was the little wee bench that was set up for the purser to actually allow people to buy stamps, etc., and postcards. Now, each postcard on a Hurtigruten vessel costs £1, so it's a bit dearer than what it is in Britain. And of course, Norway, everything's twice what it is here anyway, so they get paid twice as much as we get as well. But that's the thing. On the Fram, you get personalised. This is a sheet of the Fram's personalised stamps, only for use within Norway. It's inland with a big A in it. Europe obviously would have Europe in it, and Bergen would be world. When you came to 2014, the Finnmarken introduced its own personalised stamp for the Northern Lights, which they claim they'd probably only use when there's Northern Lights on show. And you can see it at to represent the Aurora, you had 9 wavy lines. And then when it was introduced to the rest of the fleet, it had 21 wavy lines to make an intense Aurora, I think, make it a little better on the eye. But you can see again all the various ships that got them, quite a lot. MS Spitsbergen joined the fleet in 2016. This is quite a small ship. It's about 2/3 the size of the Fram, which is again quite a small ship. And there's a naming ceremony at the top. You can see 6th of July 2016 in Svalbard. Special cancel for that. And other ones are actually cancels. Obviously, you can adjust the date. For normal cancel for anywhere we want to go, then Kirkenes, across Arctic, North Cape, and the Northern Lights. 2017, Lofoten Isles. Pictorial cancel was actually issued to the fleet as well, so they're obviously milking it for stamp collectors, the Hurtigruten. And then on Facebook, you get the various pursers cancelling the various mail. This was on the Lofoten in 2015 when it was Anya that was cancelling the mail. And in 2018, there was a change in purser. Again, you see the postcards and the stamps waiting to be sold to the various customers. A different purser, and later on and again still MS Lofoten, so crossing the Arctic Circle in this particular one. MS Midnight Soul, the purser in 2018. I must admit I can't see that in focus, but maybe you can. MS Finnmarken in North Cape. I think Ken Norris might have been in the North Cape because they kind of went daft all their various cachets. The head chef, the chief engineer, the captain, the hotel manager, I don't see a purser there, and a special cancel for North Cape. And all 4 individuals there signing things for people as well, which is, I've never seen it anywhere else. Kong Harald crossing the Arctic Circle. personalised stamp for it, different from the Hurtigruten ones, but they were probably selling them on ship anyway. Now, later in December 2019, different guy cancelling stamps. Crossing the Arctic Circle, somebody else, and the floating islands on the left-hand side as well. So these are various ones that obviously taken off the Facebook site of Hurtigruten. This particular one was from 2014, MS Lofoten celebrating 50 years of service with a special personalised stamp and postmark. And in 2016, Norway Post came out with this miniature sheet. On the miniature sheet was supposed to be celebrating food culture, and it was the northern group of countries that were actually all doing this series of stamps for food culture. You can see a nice crayfish at a spruce bar in a restaurant in, I think it's in Oslo. At the bottom part is probably this cod and beetroot barley, and you've got a nice view of the MS Polaris on the right-hand side of it. 2016, through the personalised stamps, you can see the personalised stamps, the Series 1 in 2006, the very first series were this grey, silvery type ones. Then they went to pink and later on 2006. Then they went to Series 3 in June 2007. Totally different with this greyish. This is inland ones from Series 5, 2008 onwards. A Series 6 from 2020. I only managed to get this recently. The postmark on it says posted in Nord and R95. The R means Bergen, so it was actually posted in Bergen. But the stamp itself, I think, is actually a personalised stamp, a true personalised stamp. Somebody's actually taken a photograph and got their own sheeted 20 produced from it. I don't think I've seen this anywhere else. Then we've got a Series 7, I think, from 2010, which is the ones I got in the Trollfjord when I was on it. And these are other ones for some of the other ships from Series 7. Series 10 of the personalised stamps from April 2018 onwards, they are available. This one's obviously across the Arctic Circle in Nord. And then you go to other countries that have got personalised stamps with Hurtigruten vessels on it. Netherlands have got this from Spitsbergen, the Stokmarknes, the Hurtigruten Museum, and Nordlis. They've also got Spitsbergen and Bodo, the Midnattsol in Antarctica, Nordlis, Nordkap as well. And then you go to Germany, they've got regional alternative mail stamps showing Hurtigruten ships, the Richard With from Nordbrief, and MS Polaris and Fram with Nord Courier. And German Post, Deutsche Post, they have a postcard showing the Fram in it. So there's various other countries, just going off a tangent, that actually produce things for Hurtigruten. Now, these are the items of literature that I would recommend if anybody wants to find out more things about Hurtigruten. A lovely book by John Bryant on the left-hand side. With 120 years, probably now it's coming on to nearly 130 years come next couple of years from now. The right-hand side, the various stamps of the Norwegian maritime TPOs is probably the Bible for that particular thing. Whereas the book in the middle is the sort of simplified form of that Bible. And lastly, I've got the Hurtigruten saga of the ship entering the Trollfjord with the captain looking down either side to make sure he's actually clear of the gap. And don't know whether it's a drunk guy on the ship, when it's actually swaying from side to side, etc. You can tell drunk on any ship that's actually in high waves, etc. That the drunk's the guy that can actually walk in a straight line. Everybody else is going about all over the place trying to keep their feet. But the drunks, for some reason, manage to keep going in a straight line. So that completes the display as such. So if I stop sharing, get you all back.
Thank
Not
you,
many sleeping.
Brian. As usual, any questions for Brian? Can't see anybody waving a hand. Yes, Alan, birthday boy.
Brian, does the Norwegian government subsidise the building and the actual services of the Hurtigruten?
I think the kind of, well, way back in the old days when there was a travelling post office, they obviously did subsidise it a lot at that time. I think at the moment, they'll probably say they're not, but they probably are subsidising it, because they are providing a service now at the moment. They're not taking any foreigners on boats at all at the moment. It's only Norwegian nationals only, and it's only if they have to get to where they want to go to. There's no real tourist traffic as such. And the way Hurtigruten seem to be doing it at the moment is that their expedition ships are probably, there's going to be one based in Dover, one in Hamburg, and that'll take the Brits on a tour up the coast, and the Germans can do the same from Hamburg. And that's the way they're going to get around COVID, probably come the summer. I reckon they're probably getting underhand payments from the Norwegian government to actually provide the service they're currently doing, which is really helping the people out and further up, especially from Bodo right out around to Kirkenes, which are areas that probably rely on the Hurtigruten more than further south.
Thanks.
Elma, need to unmute.
There we go. How many of the ports are actually in the fjords?
They're all sort of fjords in their own little way. They go into Geiranger, but they do that from Aalesund, and only do that in the summertime. So really, they don't really go into the fjords as such, unless there's a big port in there. Trondheim's obviously well within. I think it takes a couple of hours to actually get into Trondheim from more or less out in the sea. So there's not that many that go into fjords as such.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answers your question or not. I see my frozen up.
Anyone else? Oh, well, final opportunity to ask a question. There being none. Brian, if you can still hear us, because you've disappeared off.
I can still hear you. It's just that my camera's decided it's backed in.
Well,
I noticed I'd frozen on the screen there that I'd moved, and that didn't move at all.
it's all right. If you can hear me, on behalf of everyone, thank you very much for a very interesting display. Having been on the coastal voyage, I can only say it was fascinating. I mean, I was a wee bit obsessional. Like I got up in the middle of the night to see the port we spent 15 minutes in at 5 a.m. But other ports you're in for most of the day, and tours are laid on and so forth. And when I came home, it was fascinating. I discovered when I was clearing my mother's house that she had kept some of the material from the trip that she and my dad had done for their silver wedding anniversary in the 1970s. And there were 12 passengers on the ship they did the trip on, and there was no tours organised at all. They arrived in ports and they had to make their own entertainment. So it was fascinating to see just how touristy it had become while still supporting the local communities, because you would go into these ports and people would load in fridges and freezers and cars and all sorts of things, and then get off at the next stop, as it were. It's more or less like a bus going up the coast. And at the same time, they've also got these expedition ships like the Fram in Antarctica, which is a totally different sort of experience altogether, but fascinating altogether. So thank you very much for a very interesting evening. And it only remains for me to remind you that next week we have our very own Dr. Gardner, who is taking advantage of Zoom to share with us some of his eclectic, interesting material that he describes as his favourites. So we'll look forward to that. And meanwhile, stay safe, turn up for your jag if you're going for one, and take care, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much. And good night.
Aye, good night.
Cheers, Anne. Thanks, Alpha.